Lovely. There we go. My name is Josh Gosdin. I work over in the Welcome Center. I'm manager for housing services, which means that I manage the housing assignments office, supervise the housing ambassadors as well. And I'm in here this morning talking to everybody about customer service in our department, and a little bit more specifically, customer service in these wild and crazy times. So I've got my presentation up on my screen over here. So if you see me glance off, I'm not necessarily like looking thoughtfully into the distance. I'm just checking my PowerPoint to make sure I know what I'm talking about. I've also got the chat open right in front of right before my very eyes here as well. So if anybody experiences any issues, or I suddenly freeze, or my audio goes out or something like that, let somebody say something. Let me know and we'll do something about it. So let's just roll right on through here. So really it's breaking down how to kind of apply customer service philosophy throughout the residential living experience. And what I hope to do today is kind of illuminate where each of your roles, I understand I'm talking to RAs and part-time desk clerks, so where each of your roles kind of fits into the larger departmental customer service philosophy, as well as hopefully offering some practical applications for customer service, more than just be nice and stuff like that, and digging in a little bit and contemporizing customer service and kind of what we're all going through right now with the pandemic as well. Nothing is ever more evident than that we're in a pandemic than that I'm staring at a laptop trying to project gravitas. So we got that going for us. So like I said, I've got the chat feature open right in front of me here. So if you've got any questions, fire away. I think the chat would work best for questions at this point. But I don't necessarily need everybody to like hold your questions to the end or anything like that. If it's a question that I think I'm about to answer, I'll let you know and I'll keep going with my presentation. But I don't mind questions, just kind of in general. I feel like my basic assumption when you ask a question is that you're asking a question because you care about doing your job well. And so I like that. So let's roll right on through. So why the hell am I talking about all this? Well, I've been some places and I've done some things. I got both of my degrees here from UNT, and I've also worked here in housing for quite some time in a variety of roles, mostly customer service based. And before I got into my career here in housing and student affairs, I came up the ranks in food service. And if you've never worked in food service, then you're missing out on a fantastic opportunity to always smell like cooked food. But also, I never had a better tutor for customer service than the drive-through window that I was passing food out through. So customer service has been a big thing for me in my career for most of my adult life. And it rolls right into the role that I'm in now over here in the assignments office. So like I said, I supervise the housing ambassadors, which means that the front line of the department for customer service runs through my office. So pretty much anytime anybody says, I want to call housing or I want to email housing, they're going to talk to one of my folks. And a lot of times if it's a escalated customer service concern, they're going to reach me and we'll have a phone conversation or an email or something like that. So it's what I do. That's what I live and breathe. All right, well, so I would imagine that a lot of your supervisors have something that looks like this somewhere in their office, or hopefully you've seen this somewhere or some version of this. This is the department's mission, vision, educational priority, goals, and values. We're going to focus specifically on the mission statement because I think that it neatly outlines kind of how customer service and student development interact in our department. So the mission statement itself says the Department of Housing and Residence Life provides high quality service and transformative experiences that further the vision of the University of North Texas. So it's Department of Housing and Residence Life, and two kind of distinct buckets: housing, residence life. But it doesn't necessarily mean that the responsibilities of either of those buckets are mutually exclusive, because there's also two distinct ideas in the statement: high quality service and transformative experience. And on the surface, it would seem like housing is offering the service and residence life is offering the experience. But I think that my hope is to illuminate how it's a little bit more fluid and loopy than it might seem on the surface there. So, you know, the notion that your roles in the residence halls and really all of our role in higher education and student affairs relates to student development, relates to like students come into our doors and we have a responsibility to make sure that they leave a little bit better than we found them, is definitely one that permeates all the way throughout, you know, the notion of growth and student development, in terms of being able to help somebody figure out their own identity, interact with other people's identities, figure out what they want to do with themselves, you know, the number of folks who change majors after their first year, like that kind of thing. But I'm here for a radical interpretation of the text, and that is that when you facilitate student development, when you provide opportunities for student growth, you're providing customer service. Because at the point that you know, students begin a transaction with the university, they become customers of the university. And you know, every student who comes in through our doors is our customer. So as in this department, we provide both, like no question about it. We definitely provide that high quality service, and we provide those transformative experiences for students who go, you know, and to live with us. And that means that there's a need for that the kind of smooth operations that you've spent this entire last fortnight learning about. So the basic notion is that the residents should have a sense that somebody's looking out for them. I've had the joy of doing housing presentations in freshman orientation for the last few years. And one of my go-to jokes, but not a joke, is whenever a student lives in our residence halls, they literally have people that we pay to care about them. Like somebody's like, nobody cares about me. No, we've got you covered. We have made sure that there are people who care about you. And so translating that into action and into kind of an atmosphere in the residence halls is part of kind of what we're going for. So communication is definitely key when it comes to executing customer service well, and when it comes to also being able to provide student development and growth opportunities. You know, none of that can happen without the interpersonal interaction that comes with good communication. And quite frankly, at the point that they walk in through our doors, if we accept the notion that when we facilitate student development and student growth, we are providing customer service, then they're literally paying us to develop them. They're paying us to grow them. They're paying us to help them understand themselves and their world. And they're paying us more than a little bit of money. So I'm a big fan of transparency. This is the housing rates as posted on our website. No secret at all. Go take a look for yourself at some point. But to break it down just a little bit more succinctly, we're going to look at the housing rates specifically and kind of how that translates out. So no matter where somebody's living, they're paying money for it. And these are just the housing rates. They're not dining rates because we're not dining. And we've got the rates kind of broken down by amenities and living situation, basically. So the less somebody is willing to share, kind of the more expensive their living arrangement is going to be. You know, and none of this is small. Like we're expensive, you know, and especially, you know, I included the far right-hand column there as a way of kind of illustrating how we might fit into the Denton community in terms of cost of living. And depending on how you look at it, we're either pretty expensive or pretty cheap. Whether you're thinking about off-campus student accommodations versus an off-campus kind of traditional apartment, a 1-bedroom or a 2-bedroom or something like that. We're you know, we're not cheap. It takes a little bit. Oh, my screen is blank. Oh, my screen is back. All right, cool. So they're paying a lot of money for us, and they're expecting a high return for their investment when they're living with us. You know, we have a first-year live-on. The university has a first-year live-on requirement for all freshmen who come to the University of North Texas. They're required to live on campus during their freshman year, and the idea is trying to get them off on the right foot. And you're part of that. You're part of making sure that someone's college experience starts well. So what do they get for what they pay for? Well, they definitely get, you know, a lot of the amenities. Obviously, they get a room, or depending on what kind of a room they have, some fraction of a room, like they're getting a whole room to themselves, or half a room, or a third of a room, or something like that. They get to go to the bathroom. We're real basic like that, you know. We're trying to make sure that everybody's bodily functions are accounted for. The rooms are furnished. You know, everybody gets a bed, a desk, a chair, a dresser, a closet. Sometimes it's like a wardrobe. Cable is included. You know, that's so 20th century of us. The internet is included. That's so 21st century of us. The reason that the laundry machines are coin free is because they pay for it up front in the cost of housing. That's what lets us have machines that don't require quarters. It's because it's rolled up into the cost of housing. The mailbox over in the Union is also rolled up into the cost of housing. Just don't know if you guys knew that or not. But then in terms of like value added and you know, what do they get for what they pay for whenever they're living on campus? It is immense to note that nowhere else, you know, nowhere else off campus can a student have the same kind of growth and development opportunities that they can have living with us and living with you specifically. So the return on investment, you play a huge role in that. And someone coming in through our doors, dropping off several $1,000s and leaving, you're part of making sure that their experience was worth it. So there's a video that I'm going to spare you. It's, I don't know if anybody's ever heard of the Seattle Fish Market, but it's nothing fancier than a place where they sell fish. And what they try to do is make sure that their customers have a great time and a great experience whenever they come through their doors to get the fish. And, you know, they talk about there's more than just fish, and they made a whole like customer service training video and all that kind of stuff. And frankly, I had very little faith in my audio visual capabilities to be able to play a video during this presentation and actually like you guys hear it and not be all like, you know, jerky and everything. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to describe the philosophy contained therein. So there's 4 components to the customer service philosophy outlined in the fish video. They play, they endeavor to make their customers' day, they are present, and they choose their own attitudes. So breaking that down even further, how to do each of those things. In order to provide a fun environment, you have to be able to know and understand your residents. The physical challenges of that this year notwithstanding, it continues to be essential for you to know where they are, know where they've come from, know where they are, so that way you can help them get where they need to go. And that requires getting to know somebody. And obviously there's a great opportunity to do that whenever you're interacting with somebody for something that's like required or ongoing. There's much less of an opportunity to do that at the front desk than ever there was before because of how much we've reduced foot traffic at the front desk. And so it's going to require specific intentionality on your parts in order to make sure that you are reaching out to your residents and getting to know them and being able to understand them. And you've, like I said, spent the last week and a half getting the tools to be able to do that. And we'll continue to do so over the next several days, putting those into practice. But that also, means putting those tools into action. I don't know. If anybody out there is a psychology student or a sociology student or a neurology student or whatever, I'm sure there's some science behind intuition, but folks can tell when you're fake, I think. You know, and folks have told me they can tell when I'm being fake, so I don't really try to be fake all that often. Apparently, I'm not very good at it. So it's on you to make sure that the you that you're presenting to your residents is genuine, because genuinity inspires trust, and that inspires that relation. There's a balance that's needed, and there's a balance that's needed in a lot of these concepts I'm going to be talking about today. So being genuine and being relaxed, like whenever you're interacting with them, like genuinely relaxed. It's the residents are going to be looking to you guys for a lot of how to be, especially during the pandemic. I feel confident that this concept has been introduced at least once already, but you are all role models, just in case you didn't know. And really, at the point that you signed up for this job, you signed up to be a role model. That's part of it. Whenever you encounter somebody who's in a leadership role, they are a role model. Whether they're a good one or a bad one is a different thing, but they are a role model. All of your community directors are role models. The assistant directors that you interact with are role models. And for you, and your interactions with your residents, the aim is for you to be a good role model and to be a helpful role model. And so as you're interacting with your residents and they're looking to you for what to do and for how to be, showing them that it's okay to it's okay to do the things that we need them to do in order to be successful, in order to be healthy, in order to be safe, means that you demonstrate those things as well. I have definitely had bosses in my past, in my time, through that bullet point when I was an RA, who, especially I'm pretty old, as cell phones were coming out and becoming a lot more common, like smartphones, and they would be like, make sure you stay off your smartphone when you guys are in session with everybody. And I'm like, oh, okay, that's what we're doing. All right. And so you've encountered folks who haven't necessarily been able to role model the things that haven't been able to practice what they're preaching, or haven't been able to walk what they're talking. And I hope that won't be you. I hope you'll be able to do the things that we're asking you to do, and do the things that we're asking residents to do as well, so that they see, somebody who is showing them how to be well, for lack of a better word, or better English. I have an English degree. So making their day. One of the best, simplest, easiest ways of making somebody's day is using their name. And it's real basic, but it's real, like, important. And there's a couple of dimensions to this. The first of which is just this nice kind of like musical note in somebody's ear. Whenever I was a student and somebody that I met once in a leadership role or an authority role used my name, I was like, oh, they know me. And more than that, they took the time to make sure that they got my name right. So the dimension also of making sure that you're aware of somebody's chosen name if it doesn't match their birth name. If you're unfamiliar with the ethnic origin of somebody's name, making sure that you're pronouncing it correctly, and taking the time to learn how to pronounce it correctly. You'll just absolutely blow the day. Or at the very least, if you don't, if you're like, whatever your name is, then you'll shatter their day. So knowing somebody's name and being able to use it when you recognize them and when you encounter them is going to be so helpful. Um, my supposition is that there, what we lack in the opportunities for face-to-face interaction, we're going to make up with in digital interaction. And so being able to put names with faces is going to be, in my estimation, a little bit more of a challenge this fall than it ever has been before for you guys. And it's not an insurmountable one. It's definitely doable to be able to recognize folks. And even if it's just, being able to recognize their eyes long after seeing them come and go in the halls and on campus often enough, especially in the instances of encountering somebody in person, which will be rare. Being able to use their name, I think, is going to be really helpful, and it's going to really help ground them and normalize kind of their experience. So I mentioned I worked at a drive-through restaurant. It was called Fazoli's down in Austin, Texas, and it was fast food Italian. So it was high quality. But in all, the big selling point for Fazoli's was their breadsticks. They had these breadsticks, man, and they put these breadsticks on these like huge sheet pans, and they sent them through these giant ovens and like a fleet of breadsticks coming in and coming out. They just, like absolutely like soused them with butter and salt, and I think, a little bit of crack cocaine, because like couldn't get enough of them. And what we would do at Fazoli's is, no matter what anybody ordered, they always got 2 extra breadsticks for free. So somebody could order a dozen breadsticks and they'd walk away with 14 breadsticks. And I remember one night I was working, and it was a little bit colder, and I was working drive-through, and it was the dinner rush. And I was slinging spaghetti, and I was dropping breadsticks in the bag, and I was passing them out the windows to everybody and counting out change and all that kind of stuff. And we were just going. And at one point, I remember I had the bag in my hand, and I passed it out the window, and my manager was walking by, and he like reached past me and grabbed the bag and pulled it back in the window, and was like, "Whoa, hold on, Josh." That was how he talked. "Whoa, hold on, Josh." And he pulled it back in. He folded the top of the bag down, like folded it over, and then handed it back out to the customer and said, "Have a good night." And he turned to me and he was like, "Josh, make sure you always fold over the top of the bag." And I was like, "Matt," his name was Matt. I was like, "Matt, we're in the middle of a rush. Like, I don't have time for that shit. Like, we're trying to get all this spaghetti out." And he's like, "No, Josh." And he like leaned in like he was telling me a secret. He was like, "Heat rises." And I was like, "Matt, I'm in high school. I know heat rises." And he goes, "Yeah. So if you leave the top of the bag open, their food is going to get colder faster. But if you fold over the top of the bag, it's going to stay warm." And really what it was is, what we were trying to do was help the customer understand that we gave a damn they had a hot meal. And it was subtle, it was subliminal. Like it wasn't like, "At Fazoli's, we fold your bag." Like, it wasn't like any kind, advertised or anything like that. It was just this real subtle thing of like, "Oh, that's nice. The steam doesn't rise out as much." For many of you, I would imagine I may have shattered your illusion of fast food. Chick-fil-A is one of the worst offenders. They'll pile everything up all the way to the top, put the damn French fries on top, sticking out. And by the time you get to your table, you just got a box of cold potatoes. Like, what the heck? So after that, every time I would work there, I would fold over the bag. I'd fold the bag and hand it out the drive-through window. What that has translated to for me, and this is something that I train my housing ambassadors on, and I've trained desk clerks on for years, what that has translated into for me is, customers should feel like we give a damn about them. And really, customers should feel like we treat them like people. So it's the reason why, well, it's one of the reasons why RAs, you live in the buildings. We could have just an army of student workers who came and went and worked the desk and walked the halls and went home. But being able to have a human being who has gone through what they are about to go through and help them go through it through your own experience is invaluable. And you're each different people, RAs and part-timers alike. You're each different people. I would hazard to guess that all of the Clark Sharks are not the same personality. I would hazard to guess that the Kerr crew is not the same personality. Like, everybody's a little bit different on your staff, right? And that's on purpose. All of you are here on purpose. Like, you were all hired on purpose. And so each of you has something different to offer your residents. Each of you has a different way that you can fold the bag and humanize the experience and help them feel like we care. Help them feel like you care when you're interacting with them. And maybe that's, you know, if somebody calls the RA on call phone, maybe it's how you answer the phone. You know, instead of just like, hi, like, you know, taking a second, taking a breath. Is the RA on call? Whenever you're working the front desk, the power of, I don't know why I pretended to have a phone, because I literally have a phone right here. The power of smiling when you're on the phone. People can hear when you smile on the phone. No scientific sense, but it's true. Just whatever little thing you can add to the experience and to the interaction to help humanize and to help them feel like we give a damn about them, please do. That's how you make their day. Being there, being present. You're there, right? Like, you're all there. You're not an illusion. All right, cool. Being present when you guys are interacting with residents is key and crucial. And it adds to that humanizing experience. And it's really easy to help. It's really easy to make customers feel like an interruption or a burden. And it's just as easy to make them feel like we're glad they're here. Like, we're glad that they are helping us, you know, live. So greeting literally everybody as you encounter them. So if you know their name, use it. Like, don't just know their name. You know, be like, all right, Josh, I know everybody's name. Check. No, use it. And as they're coming and going to and from the building, as you pass them in the hallway, as they pop in and out of, I'm assuming several of you will be hosting Zoom movie nights or something at some point. As they pop in and out of your chats, using their name and greeting them helps really ground the interaction. Because so imagine a customer service scenario, and I'm sure many of you have experienced this. You're walking up to the counter or the desk or the whatever it is, and the person who is working at that station just goes, and you have to say, like, hi, I need some help. And they go, okay. Like, the dead. And that's not helpful to anybody. But you've also, I'm sure, I hope, encountered customer service situations where you've walked up to the counter or to the desk or to the whatever, and like, as soon as they see you, they're like, hello, I'm so glad you're here. And that, you know, like, balloons fall from the ceiling or something like that. Like, greeting the customers as the interaction begins helps to ground the interaction and guide the interaction. I'm an introvert. After I get off work tonight, I'm going to go home. I'm going to turn on Hulu, and I'm going to sit silently and watch it. And that is how I recharge. And I am able to have this presentation, I'm able to have these interactions because I recharge. I am not an extrovert, despite how lively I can be. And if you're an introvert, suck it up like I do. We need to be able to still meet the needs of our customers and our residents. And we'll talk a little bit about the concept of recharging towards the end of the presentation. But you know, I definitely have encountered even professionals in higher education settings or conferences that I've been to that are like, Well, I'm an introvert, so I don't really like to interact with the residents all that much, you know, because I really, it's really draining whenever I interact with them. And I'm like, you're literally here getting paid to interact with the residents. Like, figure out a way to do that for yourself is what I want to shout at them. Um, but I usually just raise my hand and say, well, here's what I do, whenever we're in those settings. Uh, but, you know, beginning that interaction and being able to, I guess, for lack of a better phrase, turn it on whenever the resident comes in, whenever you encounter them, is going to be really helpful and really nice. So there's some common customer service pitfalls that can occur when you're not present or when you're not applying some of these concepts. It's very easy. I have found it's very easy to overpromise. And a lot of times in situations that I've encountered it, it's from a very well-meaning perspective. It's the, oh, absolutely, we'll take care of that for you, no problem. We'll get all of that, you know, squared away. Without it, by the end of the day, everything will be fine. Everything will be perfect. Everything will be fine and perfect. Like, you know, if none of that is realistic, don't promise that. Like, don't set them up for a crushing disappointment. And then if you don't overpromise, it's really easy not to underdeliver. But the balance between not overpromising and not underdelivering requires you to know your resources and for you to know the scope of your responsibilities. If it isn't in your power to guarantee that a towel rack will be fixed by the end of the day, don't guarantee that a towel rack will be fixed by the end of the day. If it isn't in your power to guarantee that somebody's, you know, lights will definitely be fixed, you know, ad nauseum on examples, but not under delivering gets a lot easier when you don't overpromise. And offering real solutions. A phrase or a recommendation or a suggestion or a mandate that I'm sure you've all become familiar with by this point is talk to your community directors, talk to your supervisors, talk to your desk clerks. If it isn't in your power to grant the solution that someone seems to need, tap in the folks who have that power, or tap in the folks who can tap in the folks who have that power. Escalate as needed. And then choosing your attitude. And I'm gonna talk out of both sides of my mouth a little bit. I think that the whole notion of an attitude has been co-opted in recent years, and maybe this is not new. Maybe I'm just finally at this age, but it has been co-opted in recent years to describe unfavorably to describe dissension or disagreement or different ideas. You know, if someone, you're all grown-ass adults. By the way, I don't know if you knew that. You're adults. And you're all in college, which means that you're all receiving a reasonable amount of education and have the intelligence to do that. So you're not always going to agree with what is being said or presented or offered to you. And I have seen it often where questions or disagreements are met with, wow, they've got a bad attitude. Well, they have a different idea. And it's okay, you know, and you're all adults, and so you know that you still have a responsibility to carry out the instructions that you're given, even if you disagree with them. You have the opportunity to offer that different idea or that disagreement appropriately, and I think you've all been trained on appropriate feedback by this point. But when I say attitude, I'm not talking about what you might have heard before when someone's like, they've got a bad attitude. That's not what I'm talking about. What I'm talking about is your mindset. If you are present with the resident, going back to the previous slide, if you're present in the moment with the resident, then you have the opportunity to choose your mindset in that moment. This bullet point has gotten a lot more poignant now that we're all wearing masks a lot of the time, and I saw meme going around that was talking about how to fake a smile with your mask on, which without the mask just looks creepy as hell. But when you smile, letting it hit your eyes, and there's not a very, I don't have a very scientific description for how to accomplish this, I'm sorry to say, but I feel like we can all think of times where you have encountered somebody and they smile and the smile doesn't hit their eyes. And there's just, for me, there's just this sort of instinctual distrust with somebody whose smile doesn't hit their eyes. Because I feel like they're being put on. And I'm being put on. So that goes back to the previous point of being genuine. And that also means that, like, you know, if you're genuinely not able to get yourself into the mindset where, you know, you can smile and be like, all right, hey, cool, hey, all right, yeah, excellent, then you don't have to, you know, aim for 110% like cracked glass customer service. You can be as genuine as you need to be so that you can help engender trust with the resident. So we've got the smallest residence hall on campus has 150 students in it, and it only goes up from there. So that's hundreds, thousands of people who all, someone's calling my phone. The audacity. That should be the last ring. That should have been the last ring. There we go. All right. So we've got hundreds or thousands of people on campus who are all going to have questions. And the laws of large numbers say a lot of them are going to have the same questions. You will get over and over the same question. You will, in the space of a single desk shift, be asked the same question potentially dozens of times. In the space of a single wing meeting even, like when they're sitting there and they just heard somebody else ask the question, or they could have heard someone else asking the question if they were paying attention, they're going to ask the same question. Or in the space of a single day, you're going to get the same question over and over and over. And I submit that it is our responsibility as customer service providers to modulate our reaction to those repetitive questions. Because if we're being honest, the person who is asking me this question that I've heard for the 50th time doesn't know that I've heard that question 49 previous times. More to the point, they don't care. They just honestly have a question. And they're hoping you can be helpful. So instead of, you know, get the question for the umpteenth time and you're like, all right, I'll say this one more time. Like, instead of that, considering the circumstances that might have brought that person to you to ask you the question, not the least of which includes the fact that they assumed or hoped you would be helpful. So be helpful. Answer their question. Over here in our office, if anybody's familiar with the old adage, you teach a man to fish and he eats for a day, or no, you give a man a fish and he eats for a day. You teach him how to fish and he eats for a lifetime. Teach him how to fish is one of our rallying cries whenever students or parents get in touch with us. So not only do we answer their question, but we always try to show them how to find the answer for themselves for next time. And so that's a pretty good way of continuing that student growth, no small part of which is empowerment. And so helping residents know and understand their own resources so they can find their own answers for the future, but still answer their question. There's a balance to be struck, in my view, there's a balance to be struck between, like, you know, helping somebody answer a question like the customer service providers we all are, and helping somebody grow and learn into a competent adult, which is our responsibility in providing student development. And that's answer the question and teach them how to fish. So in the previous scenario of you get the question for the 50th time and you're like, you know, if I hear that question one more time, I shall destroy the world, you know, like you start to lose your mind a little bit. The person who's asking that question for the 50th time doesn't deserve your bad day. You know, whenever you walk into a Starbucks, or if you walk into like a department store, or even if you walk up to the front desk of a corporate office, you don't deserve the bad day of the person behind the counter. And likewise, our residents don't deserve our bad days. So they deserve us at our best. One of my jokes, but not a joke, with my staff is, all I require is your best all the time. And what I've come to the conclusion for myself in my personal life and how I apply it with my staffs is, our best is different from day to day. Our best is different from day to day. Some days, and you know, I haven't looked at the RLT schedule in a minute, but I would imagine mental health has been a topic, or will be a topic. Some days somebody's best is just getting out of bed, and they did their best and they made it out of bed, and that's the best they could do that day. And so for each of you, when we say the residents deserve us at our best, whatever your best is for that day is what they deserve. And so it's a subjective scale, and it also comes with a lot of trust from your community directors and from your desk clerks to you, that what you are giving is your best for the residents. So a lot of that works really well when we're not in the middle of a global pandemic. But we're in the middle of a global pandemic. So there are some other dimensions to consider in applying customer service. And some of these, my guess is that some of these are going to feel familiar to you and your experience, because you guys are also students. In fact, you're students first. When providing customer service in a time of such a high level of uncertainty and anxiety and fear, accuracy is key and crucial. So knowing your resources means being familiar with your reporting protocol, being familiar with your job responsibilities, but it also means being familiar with like your student resources, like other offices on campus that can help students with things, being familiar with the existence of the COVID hotline and knowing to refer students to it as needed. And it also means that if you don't know the answer to a question, tell them that you don't know. Don't stop there. You can say, I don't know, but let me see if I can find out for you. Or I don't know, but let me refer you to somebody who might. Don't just be like, I don't know. Continue to help them get the answers that they need. But if you don't know, you don't know. Or if you're not sure, then it's okay to not be sure. It's okay to say, let me see if I can find that out for you. Let me see if I can find somebody who can help you with that, because I'm not sure. Learn the answer yourself. That way you can provide the answer the next time. But there's no need to make anything up or guess or anything like that, especially with how fluid this whole response to the pandemic is probably going to remain. Like I said, I'm a big fan of transparency. I think that whenever possible, transparency, whenever possible, transparency helps provide assurance. It also helps provide context, especially in times of crisis like this. Holding back information can sometimes give the impression that you're hiding something, and it can make folks feel like they don't trust you now. So being transparent whenever possible is, in my estimate, key and crucial to continuing to provide the service that we need to provide during this time. And I say without bus driving, and this means, for me, this means detaching your own personal distaste or enmity or annoyance or irritation with how the department is handling something, how the university is handling something, because your emotions, while valid, I'm a I'm a big proponent of all your feelings are valid, are born from your specific experience, and they may not necessarily match the resident's experience. But if you offer them as a side dish to the information, then you have irrevocably tainted the resident's experience with your emotions and your reactions. And so being transparent about the university's response without bus driving looks something like the university is developing or has developed a plan for handling an on-campus outbreak. Instead of saying, the university probably has a plan, who knows what it is, it probably sucks, like, coloring the information that you provide with your own emotional reaction doesn't really help the resident get what they need, which is just an answer to a question. So being transparent wherever possible. And you can only be transparent with what you know. So if you don't know, again, going back to the first bullet point, refer them to the appropriate resources. So all your feelings are valid. There you go, there's validation. You can validate the residents as well. Without over positivity, another phrase for that might be toxic positivity. Without everything's gonna be fine, like, don't worry about it. Here's the silver lining. The notion of empathy looks more like sitting with somebody, sitting next to somebody, rather than standing over somebody and telling them how they should feel. And so being able to validate somebody's emotions and somebody's anxiety and somebody's fear about what's happening and say, like, I get that, like, that it makes sense that you're feeling that way. Without being like, don't worry about it. Like, everything's going to be fine. Or, going in the other direction and being like, you should be afraid, like that doesn't help either. And so a lot of times in the contemporary customer service delivery environment, folks just want to feel secure and cared for. And if they come to you with anxiety and with fear, and you can offer them these things, you can offer them accurate information, you can offer them transparency, and you can offer them validation, then you've helped make their day. All right, so I mentioned that we were going to talk a little bit about self-care. How the hell are we supposed to take care of ourselves right now? And I'm also aware of the dimension of there's an inherent power differential between you and me. I have resources you lack, I have experience you lack, I have privilege you lack. And so for me to say, make sure you take care of yourselves, can definitely come across as prescriptive and paternalistic. And my hope is that I don't come across like that. My hope is instead that I'm able to steer you in the direction of being able to provide self-care for yourselves within your own context, rather than transplanting my context onto your context, because my context is not the same as your context. So taking care of ourselves in current situations so that we can provide that customer service, so that we can be our best, so that we can validate others' emotions because we've helped to manage our own emotions, is key and crucial. So as I mentioned, communication is a huge part of customer service delivery, and that also means individual interpersonal communication, communicating your needs and your wants with your peers and with your supervisors. With your peers, this can definitely go a long way towards mitigating interpersonal conflict. You spent some time last week talking about conflict mediation with residents. You're also not always going to get along with each other. I'm just putting that out there. Because you're all, again, individuals, you're all student leaders, which means that you all have different ideas, and there's like dozens of you in a group. So disagreement will happen. And being able to communicate your needs and your wants with your peers goes a long way towards managing those conflicts, and goes a long way towards continuing to be able to serve the residents as a team, not just as a bunch of lone sharks. And that also involves communicating your needs and your wants with your supervisors, and in whatever form that might be. So the other side of that is at the point that you've communicated your needs and your want to another person, whether it's a peer or your supervisor, they can only do what they can do. And so communicating your need and your want, your needs and your wants doesn't automatically mean that all good will flow towards you. What it does is it gives the other person the opportunity to meet those needs and wants as best they can. And they can't meet those needs and wants unless you communicate them. So if one of your needs is related to the fact that you're exhausted, but you don't communicate that you're exhausted, you just keep showing up exhausteder and exhausteder, and eventually you're the exhaustedest you've ever been, and you collapse in a pile of sticks, then that could have been avoided, that could have been mitigated with some communication. So here's my disclaimer. You saw my credentials at the top. I am not a therapist. I'm not a counselor. I am a fan of this concept introduced in the fact that I am in a shit ton of therapy myself. And it's an acronym that breaks down into managing your emotional needs and reactions physiologically. So if you're having a bad day, if you're having a bad moment, if you're feeling particularly anxious, stressed out, you're exhausted, ask yourself, are you hungry? Not that this is a Snickers commercial or anything like that, but honestly, if you haven't eaten, or if you can't remember the last time you ate, probably eat something. And I've been there, we've all been there. The all-nighters or the marathon shifts or the just one thing after another thing after another thing after another thing. And you're like, wait a minute. I was craving breakfast this morning, but it's sunset now. Like, eat. Are you angry? What are you angry about? There's a need to express or move through that anger in order to be able to serve. And I don't know about you guys, but when I feel angry, like all the muscles in my face feel tight. My shoulders come up next to my ears. So there's a distinctly physiological stress component to my anger. And when I express my anger, oh man, it just feels lighter. When I move through my anger, it feels lighter. It's a lot easier to manage the day. Are you lonely? It happens. Especially when we're all isolated in a pandemic. If you're lonely, hit somebody up. I don't know if this rings a bell for anybody else, but oftentimes I feel like I don't want to bother them. I don't want to bother somebody. Like, I'm fine. I'll just, it's whatever. I'll see people virtually in class tomorrow, virtually in staff tomorrow. I don't want to bother somebody. How often when someone reaches out to you are they bothering you? If you are prepared to be available for someone else, for a friend, for a coworker, for a resident, when they just need somebody, imagine what that would be like if someone were that for you. And imagine how likely that is, because of how many of you are sitting there going, yeah, I'd help out my friend. Imagine how likely that is that you won't be bothering somebody if you reach out to them. If you just say, hey, and someone's like, hey, what's going on? And then boom, you're not lonely anymore. Communicating your needs and your wants. Go to bed. Stop pulling all-nighters. I got a liberal arts degree, and so I definitely have nothing to speak to on the sciences, but I didn't get a science degree on purpose. But in my view, staying up all night and studying and for a test the next day will not serve you nearly as well as going into that test well-rested. You're much more likely to have the recall and the memory and the intuition to be able to actually get more questions right than being able to memorize rote facts and regurgitate them. Likewise, you're no good to anybody if you're on call or if you're on a desk shift and you haven't had a good night's sleep. So go to bed or take a nap if you can. You are worth boundaries in all circumstances, just as like a human being. You are worth boundaries in all circumstances. It's a little bit different for the RAs, isn't it? You guys live where you work. You've got a damn sign on your door that says resident assistant. They know where you live. But there's still an opportunity to create and maintain boundaries, setting and holding your boundaries with your residents, which is why the RA on call number is posted as often as it is, which is why so many of your desks are 24 hours, which is why there are other resources. You are not the only resource for your residents. Now, you do live in, and again, that is on purpose. And so it isn't necessarily a question of if I'm not on call or if I'm not on desk, I'm not here. Like, you should still be able to engage with your residents when you're able to engage with your residents. If someone knocks on your door at 3 in the morning, please don't shout, go away. But that also means, what boundaries can you set with your, not just with your residents, but with your peers, with yourself, emotional boundaries. Going back to that introversion thing, like, if someone hits me up tonight and says, hey, you want to hang out? I'm going to say, nope, I do not want to hang out. I want to sit and watch my Hulu in silence. This is what I need. So being honest with yourself about what you need. We're all here for the same thing. And we're all here on purpose. So each of you guys were hired on purpose, but none of you were drafted in the military. You also said yes when someone said, do you want a job? We're all serving our residents so that they leave a little bit better than we found them when they walked through our doors. If I haven't beat this horse dead enough with this drum, working together is essential. It requires that communication. It requires those resource usage. And in my view, having worked on, I guess, if you were to phrase it this way, both sides of the house, they're the same. When we provide student development, we're providing customer service. They are our customers. They're paying us for growth and development. They're also paying us for beds. But they're paying us so that we can help them figure themselves out and figure out their world. That's why you guys are getting all this training. So, the chat was pretty quiet this whole time, but I'm happy to entertain any questions that anybody might have about anything, or clarifications or anything like that. But otherwise, that's all I got. That's my contact information. If anybody ever needs anything, feel free to hit me up. Anybody got any questions? Oh, thanks, Joe. I appreciate it. Hi, Rollins. Thanks, Eduardo. Getting a lot of thanks in the chat, not a lot of questions in the chat, which I appreciate. But I'll just hang out for just a little bit in case anybody's typing a novel. I appreciate you, Mr. Zett.